Yukon River. The Yukon River Gwich'in, Ųůg Han or Yuk Han, Inupiaq, Kuigpak, Inupiaq, Kuukpak, Deg Xinag, Yeqin, Han, Tth'echù or Chuu, southern Tutchone. Chu Nìikwän is a major watercourse of northwestern North America. From its source in British Columbia, Canada, it flows through Canada's territory of Yukon, itself named after the river. The lower half of the river continues westwards through the U.S. state of Alaska. The river is 3,190 kilometers (1980 miles) long and empties into the Bering Sea at the Yukon Kuskokwim Delta. The average flow is 6,400 m3/s 227,000 ft/s. The total drainage area is 833,000 km2 321,500 sq mi, of which 323,800 km2 125,000 sq mi lies in Canada. The total area is more than 25% larger than Texas or Alberta. The longest river in Alaska and Yukon, it was one of the principal means of transportation during the 1896–1903 Klondike Gold Rush. A portion of the river in Yukon, the 30-mile section, from Lake Laberge to the Teslin River, is a National Heritage River and a unit of Klondike Gold Rush International Historical Park. Paddle wheel riverboats continued to ply the river until the 1950s, when the Klondike Highway was completed. After the purchase of Alaska by the United States in 1867, the Alaska Commercial Company acquired the assets of the Russian-American Company and constructed several posts at various locations on the Yukon River. The Yukon River has had a history of pollution from military installations, dumps, wastewater, and other sources. However, the Environmental Protection Agency does not list the Yukon River among its impaired watersheds, and water quality data from the U.S. Geological Survey shows relatively good levels of turbidity, metals, and dissolved oxygen. The Yukon and Mackenzie rivers have much higher suspended sediment concentrations than the Great Siberian Arctic rivers. The Yukon River Intertribal Watershed Council, a cooperative effort of 70 First Nations and tribes in Alaska and Canada, has the goal of making the river and its tributaries safe to drink from again by supplementing and scrutinizing government data. Name. The name Yukon or Ųůg Han is a contraction of the words in the Gwich'in phrase Chu Han, which means white water river and refers to the pale color of glacial runoff in the Yukon River. The contraction is Ųůg Han if the /o/ remains nasalized, or Yuk Han if there is no vowel nasalization. In the 1840s, different tribes had different opinions as to the literal meaning of Yukon. In 1843, the Ųùg had told the Russian-American Company that their name for the river was Yuk Han, and that this name meant Big River. However, Yuk Han does not literally correspond to a Ųùg phrase that means Big River. Then, 2 years later, the Gwich'ins told the Hudson's Bay Company that their name for the river was Yukon and that the name meant Whitewater River. Whitewater River in fact corresponds to Gwich'in words that can be shortened to form Yukon. Because the Ųùg had been trading regularly with both the Gwich'ins and the Yupiqs, the Ųùg were in a position to borrow the Gwich'in contraction and to conflate its meaning with the meaning of Kuigpak River Big, which is the Yupik name for the same river. For that reason, the documentary evidence suggests that the Ųùg had borrowed the contraction Ųůg Han Whitewater River from Gwich'in and erroneously assumed that this contraction had the same literal meaning as the corresponding Yupik name Kuigpak River Big. The Loups River is the former name of the upper course of the Yukon, from Marsh Lake to the confluence of the Pelly River at Fort Selkirk. The following table lists the indigenous names for the Yukon. Course. The generally accepted source of the Yukon River is the Llewellyn Glacier at the southern end of Atlin Lake in British Columbia. Others suggest that the source is Lake Lindeman at the northern end of the Chilkoot Trail. Either way, Atlin Lake flows into Tagish Lake via the Atlin River, as eventually does Lake Lindeman after flowing into Bennett Lake. Tagish Lake then flows into Marsh Lake via the Tagish River. The Yukon River proper starts at the northern end of Marsh Lake, just south of Whitehorse. Some argue that the source of the Yukon River should really be Teslin Lake and the Teslin River, which has a larger flow when it reaches the Yukon at Tt'echù. The upper end of the Yukon River was originally known as the Ųųg River until it was established that it actually was the Yukon. North of Whitehorse, the Yukon River widens into Lake Laberge, made famous by Robert W. Service's The Cremation of Sam McGee. Other large lakes that are part of the Yukon River system include Kuskokwim Lake into the Tth'echù River and Kluane Lake into the Kluane and then White River. The river passes through the communities of Whitehorse, Carmacks, just before the Five Finger Rapids and Dawson City in Yukon, and crossing Alaska into Eagle. After Mountain Village, the main Yukon Channel frays into many channels sprawling across the delta. There are a number of communities after the head of passes, as the channel division is called locally Nunam-Ikwa, Alakanuk, Emmonak, and Kotlik. Of those delta communities, Emmonak is the largest with roughly 760 people in the 2000 census. Emmonak's gravel airstrip is the regional hub for flights. Hazards. Navigational obstacles on the Yukon River are the Five Finger Rapids and Rink Rapids downstream from Carmacks. Bridges. Despite its length, the Ųųg Bridge north of Marsh Lake on the Alaska Highway, the Robert Campbell Bridge, which connects the Whitehorse suburb of Riverdale to the downtown area, the Yukon River Bridge in Carmacks on the Klondike Highway, and the Yukon River Bridge north of Fairbanks on the Dalton Highway. A car ferry crosses the river at Dawson City in the summer. It is replaced by an ice bridge over the frozen river during the winter. Plans to build a permanent bridge were announced in March 2004, although they are currently on hold because bids came in much higher than budgeted. There are also two pedestrian-only bridges in Whitehorse, as well as a dam across the river and a hydroelectric generating station. The construction of the dam flooded the Whitehorse Rapids, which gave the city its name, and created Chwatka Lake. Geography and Ecology. Some of the upper slopes of this watershed, e.g. New Lotto Hills, are forested by black spruce. This locale near the Seward Peninsula represents the near westernmost limit of the black spruce, Picea mariana, one of the most widespread conifers in northern North America. The river flows into several parklands and refuges including Innoko National Wildlife Refuge, Ųůg Han National Wildlife Refuge, Yukon Charlie Rivers National Preserve, Yukon Delta National Wildlife Refuge, Yukon Flats National Wildlife Refuge. Fisheries. The Yukon River is home to one of the longest salmon runs in the world. Each year Chinook, coho, and chum salmon return to their terminal streams in Alaska, the Yukon Territory, and British Columbia. The Chinook have the longest journey, with an estimated 35–50% bound for Canada. As salmon do not eat during their spawning migration, Yukon River salmon must have great reserves of fat and energy to fuel their thousands-mile-long journey. As a result, Yukon River salmon are noted for their especially rich and oily meat. The villages along the Yukon have historically relied on and continue to rely on salmon for their cultural subsistence and commercial needs. Salmon are traditionally dried, smoked, and frozen for both human and sled dog consumption. Common methods of fishing on the Yukon include set gill nets, drift nets, dip nets, and fish wheels. The preference of certain gear is largely dependent on the river's varied characteristics in different areas. Some parts of the river do not have eddies to make set nets successful, whereas in other places, the tributaries are small enough to make drifting impractical. Over the last 20 years, salmon recruitment, the number of returning adults, has taken several shocks. The late 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s have been marked by radically reduced runs for various salmon species. The United States Department of Commerce issued a federal disaster declaration for the 2008 and 2009 commercial Chinook-Yukon River fisheries, calling for the complete closure of commercial fishing along with restrictions on subsistence fishing. The root cause of these poor returns remains debated, with questions about the effects of climate change on ocean food supply and disease prevalence in returning adults, the methods of fishing used on the river, and the effects of the Bering Sea pollock trawl fleet on food supply and salmon bycatch. In 2010, the Alaska Department of Fish and Game's Board of Fisheries issued the first ever restriction for net mesh size on the Yukon, reducing it to 7.5 inches 190 mm. Various organizations are involved to protect healthy salmon runs into the future. The Yukon River Drainage Fisheries Association was formed in 1990 by a consensus of fishers representing the entire drainage in response to recent disaster years. Its organizational goals include giving voice to the village fishers that have traditionally managed these resources, enabling communication between fishers and fishery managers, and helping to preserve the ecological integrity of salmon runs and local culture's traditional ecological knowledge. In March 2001, the U.S. and Canadian governments passed the Yukon River Salmon Agreement to better manage an internationally shared resource and ensure that more Canadian-originated salmon return across the border. The agreement is implemented through the Yukon River Panel, an international body of 12 members, equal parts American and Canadian, that advises managers of Yukon River fisheries concerning restoration, conservation, and coordinated management. Tribal organizations such as the Association of Village Council Presidents (AVP), Council of Athabascan Tribal Governments (CAC), and Tanana Chiefs Conference (TCC) work to sustain Yukon River salmon to promote healthy people, cultures, and communities. Tributaries: Yukon Territory, Tth'echù River, Big Salmon River, Little Salmon River Yukon, Ordenskjold River, Teslin River, Pelly River, Macmillan River, Stewart River, Nadine River, Lansing River, Hess River, Mayo River, McQuestion River, White River, Donjek River, Kluane River, Nisling River, Beaver Creek, 60 Mile River, Indian River, Klondike River, 40 Mile River, Alaska, Tatanduck River, 70 Mile River, Nation River, Kandik River, Charlie River, Porcupine River. Tributaries in the Yukon. Minor tributaries: Fishing Branch, Bell River, Eagle River, Rock River Yukon, Driftwood River Yukon, Old Crow River, Bluefish River. Tributaries in Alaska: River, Black River, Wood River, Bear Mountain Creek, Chandalar Creek, Shinjek River East Fork, Conus River, Eskimo Creek, Christian River, Chandalar River, East Fork Chandalar River, Junjik River, Wind River, Middle Fork Chandalar River, North Fork Chandalar River, West Fork Chandalar River, Martin Creek, Birch Creek, Hadweenzik River, Beaver Creek, Hudzonner River, Doll River, Ray River, Big Salt River, Hess Creek, Garnet Creek, Fish Creek, Texas Creek, Coal Creek, Tanana River, Nabesna River, Chisana River, Teslin River, Goodpaster River, Delta River, Salcha River, Chena River, Wood River, Nenana River, Talavana River, Kantishna River, NC Creek, Tazitna River, Bluebell Creek, Dagislakna Creek, Bandana Creek, Blind River, Bering Creek, Owitna River, Sulatna River, Big Creek, Beaver Creek, Glacier Creek, Melazitna River, Black Sand Creek, Little Melazitna River, Ruby Slough, Yuki River, East Fork Yuki River, Kala Creek, Kelly Creek, Galena Creek, Bishop Creek, Kuigpak River, Workyard Creek, Jisasa River, Catio River, Dulvi River, Huslier River, Newlitner River, Tom Cook Slough, Billy Hawk Creek, Cutoff Slough, Hogatzer River, Clear Creek, Batzer River, Matthews Slough, Little Indian River, Calamity Creek, Pocahontas Creek, Canuty River, Discovery Creek, Alatna River, Surrock Creek, South Fork Koyukuk River, Jim River, Jane Creek, John River, North Fork Koyukuk River, Nulato River, Cothall River, Anvik River, Bonacilla River, Styahawk River, Indoko River, Payniut Slough, Reindeer River, Iditarod River, Yetna River, First Chance Creek, Mud River, Dishner River, Coffee Creek, Tolstoy Creek, Madison Creek, Mastodon Creek, Hurst Creek, Taft Creek, Finland Creek, Scandinavian Creek, North Fork Innoko River, Tango Creek, West Fork North Fork Innoko River, Colorado Creek, Caco Creek, Engineer Creek, Reindeer River, Achulinguk River, Andreevsky River, Kashanuk River Distributary. In media, the Yukon River features as the setting for the 2015 National Geographic Channel series Yukon River Run. The industrial metal band Lindemann wrote a song named Yukon on their first album Skills in Pills.